G. Balasubramaniam, who has been a mentor of sorts in our growing up years as principal, and all the kind of learning trajectory that we have had. Very impactful, and in his own way, I think he has influenced thousands of teachers, principals, and educators. In fact, while Nishi ma'am will do all the introduction, I'm just extending a warm welcome and a deep sense of gratefulness to you, sir, for being with us today. Dear teachers, I know that you have had a very busy morning. I want to, in fact, use this opportunity to tell Mr. G. Balasubramaniam and all of you that starting today, I think we want to call it the Friday Tea Musings, and next time onwards, with the promise that when we all meet, we'll make up for it. A cup of tea and a set of biscuits would not be out of place. It's tea time and relaxing time for each one of you. We'll call it learning musings over tea. So I want first of all of you to understand that nothing is enjoyed, nothing is learned when you're under pressure. I think what is really required is it has to be done with pleasure. The word has does not here mean any kind of compulsion. My dear teachers, there's always a time in everyone's life when there'll be that little busy phase when suddenly this disruption forces us to kind of take steps that will make life easy for us and therefore easier for our children because we make it easy for them. Please always be assured that your stress, we are here to take it. You will always find us standing behind you like a rock, scaffolding that you would never fall, because if you fall, we fail. That should never happen. And as your school's co-learner, as I like to call myself, or our school's co-learner, let's take these walks or runs, as we call them in our stride, and make sure that every given opportunity we extend our learning and therefore impact the process of our coaching, teaching, supporting, scaffolding our children as much as I want to do to you. Please be completely assured that if you have any problem, you are free to reach your principal and me and be assured of support. We want you to be happy learners in this beautiful journey which people like Mr. Balasubramaniam or anyone else who joins us for tea on Friday evenings, and not necessarily on every Friday, in consultation, we'll do it together and enjoy this blissful journey. Thank you so much, and thank you, Balaji, for being with us.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, sir. Good morning, all my colleagues. I'm honored to introduce to you Mr. Balasubramanian, widely acclaimed as a premier teacher trainer and well known for ushering change management in schools. A graduate in chemistry from the Presidency College, Chennai, Mr. Balasubramanian has postgraduate degree in analytical and inorganic chemistry, in Hindi and in education. His interests include philosophy, psychology, poetry, and literature. His illustrious and inspiring career began with him as a postgraduate teacher in chemistry in a public school, following which he took over as the principal of Hindu Senior Secondary School, Chennai. He joined the CBSE as a joint secretary in 1984 and worked in several capacities in academics, examination, confidential, and administration branches of CBSE. Elevated to the post of Director Academic in 1997, he held the additional charge of the Chief Vigilance Officer of the board. He's been instrumental in introduction of several innovations in curriculum in CBSE, which include frontline curriculum, communicative approach to language teaching, information technology, biotechnology, entrepreneurship, fashion studies, disaster management, life skill education, alternatives to homework, among others. He's always been a strong advocate of stress-free education, He has initiated several steps in this direction. He is widely traveled. He's participated in several national and international conferences and presented papers on a wide variety of subjects of academic interest. He's authored several books on education and also penned his reflections in poetry. Sir is a recipient of several awards: Vocational Excellence Award, Rotary Club Chennai; Seva Ratna in Education, the Centenarian Trust Chennai; Lifetime Excellence Award, Vimhans, Delhi. Presently, he is engaged with several premier organizations and leading educational institutions as mentor and academic advisor. Welcome once again, sir. Actually, many of my colleagues who've attended your training workshops at Gyan Bharati School on earlier occasions, they're actually waiting to hear from you. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and it is indeed a great pleasure to be with all of you this evening. Down the memory lane, my memory goes back to the days when I visited Gyan Bharati, when my good friend Mr. Shekhar was the principal, and I always used to tell him that he was a principal with a difference, because he had his own thought architecture of how ideologically the school has to be run, and I used to enjoy my interactions with him. I must also thank Lataji for inviting me to share some of my concerns and experiences. And today I'll be talking to you about the topic blended learning, the call of the future, because we are in a very sensitive and important period of our educational journey, when we are facing a transformation. And therefore, each one of us, as Lataji pointed out some time back, is a co-learner in the journey. And therefore, let us see what is this blended learning, and whether it is a magic that has come with the technology in 2020, or has it some background earlier. So I'm just walking to my PPT, right? So I think show full screen. Oh, no. My PPT, 1 minute. Where is my? Are you able to see the PPT?
No, no.
1 second. Right? Are you able to see now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So, friends, very good evening to all of you. And I'm just going to show a slide, and would like to see your reaction to find how many of you are experiencing this feeling at this point of time. Right? How many of you are really feeling like breaking down the the laptop you are sitting through? Because today, when webinars are conducted across the country, I know in many places, teachers are suffering from 3 to 4 webinars a day. So many people used to come call me, sir, one more webinar, right? So, but I'm sure that with Gyan Bharati School, that's not the case, right? Because ye Gyan ki Bharati hai, so automatically I'm sure your curiosity for learning is very high. Well, nevertheless, when you come to this kind of online experiences, we sit before the screen, and then we switch off ourselves. Either we switch off the screen, or we are mentally and emotionally disconnected with what's happening around. Because, learning is something. I can talk to you for an hour and a half, but there is no guarantee that anyone sitting on the other side is going to be very passionately listening to what I am talking around, right? Um, hello, hello, yeah. Uh, so the question is that there is a social disconnect between the teacher and the child, or the speaker and the listener. If that is what is true for you and me at this age, imagine if you are going to have an online class, what kind of emotions or experiences the children sitting on the other side may be feeling. Either they are too passive or they are too indifferent. That's a kind of scenario in which we seem to be operating. Therefore, when you talk about online learning, it's very, very important for us to be very sensitive to some of the issues that surface on in this process. Well, friends, the question today is that before I walk in, I'm going to give you the outline or the learning objectives, because today when you talk about the national education policy, national policy talks about assessment of people, or assessment, what do you call, pedagogical deliveries based on learning objectives. So what I'm planning to deliver in the next maximum 75 minutes is that what is learning and how does it going to happen? How does the brain respond to the process of learning? Is learning a socio-emotional construct? Is blended learning new, or how old it is? And why do we need blended learning at all? Is it an opportunity or a necessity? What is the myth of online learning? Are we doing a mistake in the existing process? What's the right pedagogy for online learning? And how do we organize blended learning in the classrooms? Given that scenario, this blended learning or online learning, what you call right now, has come as a necessity of the emerging situation. Possibly in the last month, February, 5 months before, you might not have thought of having an online classroom. But it was right in the month of March when the corona issue came and the COVID-19 started confronting us. I think with the lockdown, we moved into a situation of chaos, right? What is the thing which what started as a health crisis slightly moved into a kind of a social crisis, an industrial crisis, a business crisis, an educational crisis, an academic crisis, a political crisis, and all that's happening around. So the manifestation of corona, it has spread more like an octopus, spreading its wings, its hold everywhere. And therefore, our school system, our pedagogical system has also become a victim of this situation. And in order to quickly manage and see that we are in somewhat a communicative position, we had opted for the so-called online classrooms right now, right? But when you talk of this corona or COVID, remember one thing, this kind of an experience is nothing into the world. You and I may be seeing it for the first time. I want you to look at the photographs which you see here, right? You have first two photographs. You are the first two photographs where you find, people wearing a mask. You find a huge hospital with hundreds of beds. And now that was the year 1919. Now you see the two which are, it is 2020. What does it mean? A century has passed. Even after 100 years, almost we are adopting the same kind of practices that you have. The 1919 it was a Spanish flu. We used the mask, and 2020 we have got COVID. We are using the mask. We have the same kind of huge treatments what's happening around. So remember one thing: when this pandemic has come, it is something new. In other words, when I say the use the word chaos, chaos is nothing new to this universe. Chaos comes in one way or the other, and educational systems become victim to this chaos, right? So in the month of March, when the COVID situation came, there was a sudden announcement that, everything is in lockdown. And a person like me who used to travel 5 days a week, hardly I used to say at home. I just thought it was just impossible. And today, you wouldn't believe, it is 130 days since I am sitting at home, not going out of the house. And what was impossible has become possible now. That's exactly what I'm going to talk to you today, that how do we convert an impossibility into possibility, and then you find that the learning opportunities, how they emerge from that. So you look at the word impossible, that houses it in itself the word possible. What I thought I can't do has become what is possible now, and that's what Ralph Emerson says. Every man is an impossibility until he is born. Right? That's very true. So the question is that possibility and impossibility are interpreted in terms of events, in terms of actions, rather than in terms of precepts or concepts over there. And Muhammad Ali was pointed out that impossible is not a fact, it is an opinion. So when I thought in the month of March it was impossible, now it has become possible. It was not a fact, it was just an opinion, right? So when you think that the online learning or blended learning at this point of time is impossible, please note that it is only an opinion. Because once you have a scaffolding system available, once you have a support system available, once you understand the nuances of blended learning, what you thought was impossible will become quite possible at this point of time. So now that's what Mandela pointed out. It always seems impossible until it is done. Therefore, but 4 months before, when on online class you thought it was impossible, now it has become possible, right? Now my memory goes back to my own days when I was a teacher in the year 1974, when the Doordarshan came, and the educational channel ETV walked in, and I was requested to take an online class on television. For nearly 1 year, I taught chemistry in those days when technology was at its lowest ebb, and you didn't have much of these kind of support systems. I know pretty well how difficult it is to come online and teach. You know, you, especially when you are on a live situation, that even the slightest mistake you do get noticed over that. But nevertheless, we have to walk into it, we have to plunge into it, and therefore we move around. As a matter of fact, before the Wright brothers took off the first aircraft, we thought it was not possible, right? Today, when you look at the Rafale, which has come down here, everything that was declared as impossible has just become possible, and therefore, all that what we need to do is to dare to do that. So, let me, before I walk into the blended learning, to tell you its nuances. Remember one thing. I want to, you want you to understand that whatever myths you have about blended learning, whatever you think will not be possible in your situation, will all become possible. And therefore, I am only trying to create a mindset to you that unless your mind is ready for a blended learning, any amount of support the school gives will not be good enough, right? And therefore, as you know pretty well, when Edmund Hillary went to Everest, in the first time, he did not conquer Everest. And in spite of that, he was given the title of Sir by Her Excellency, the Queen of United Kingdom. So when he went to receive the award, on the screen, there was a huge Everest picture, and he turned around and looked at it and smiled and said, "Oh, Mount Everest, I will come again and conquer you, because as a mountain you can't grow further, but as a human I can." That is the difference. A teacher you were 5 years before, you are a better teacher now. 5 years later, you may be much better a teacher now. The most important thing is our willingness to grow, our willingness to see opportunities, our willingness to see possibilities at the point of time. So impossibility is only a word in the dictionary of fools and people who are self-defeating. And if you want to be in teaching profession, you cannot be self-defeating, right? Because the moment you become self-defeating, you are really creating a roadblock to a community of people who are interested on your hand. Therefore, a teacher is always a winner. A teacher always sees a possibility, and friends, and therefore the wordings of Francis of Assisi I think it's very, very important. Start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you are doing what's impossible. And I think that's a spirit with which, you cannot build Rome over a day. Every brick has, to build a palace, you have to put brick by brick. And if you want a blended learning process tomorrow, I can bet that after my lecture, you are not going to get a magic wand to change things tomorrow and get all the skills required for what you call the blended learning. It will take 1 year minimum. I'm talking about the teachers of Gyan Bharati, it will take 1 year. Maybe for our teachers of other schools, it could take 2 years also. Because it's not only the mindset is important, but you need to have a design thinking, right? I wish all the teachers do understand the basics of design thinking, because design thinking is not a concept meant for an industry or a factory, but even for designing your lesson plan. I think design thinking is very, very important. In having your pedagogical delivery for the classroom, design thinking is very, very important. So friends, first thing I want to tell you, don't have any anxiety. If you look across the country, I can bet a number of teachers across the country are pressing their panic button and are suffering from anxiety. You won't be surprised when I tell you a primary teacher of a school in Chennai called me up and said, "Sir, I want to quit teaching because I'm teaching a UKG class and my principal tells me I must teach online. I don't know how do I teach a rhyme or something online or a story." So maybe that is possible for her, but she has not been trained. Nobody has given her the motivation and the kind of go-getting feeling so that she could do that. So teacher community, almost every day I am doing training program to teachers and principals, and I think in the last 1 month I should have covered not less than 15,000 teachers. And I can bet every time the question the answer session, people come and ask a question, "Sir, we are not sure whether this will happen." I said, "I'm very happy you are not sure, but the very fact you are aware that you are not sure, that's the first step that you need to go." So don't have any anxiety, right? Don't press a panic button, right? Nothing is going to happen tomorrow. Even if you are doing a good job online, suddenly one day the technology doesn't work. Suddenly one day your demonstration doesn't work. Well, that's a part of the game. I remember a very interesting incident of my teaching online, the chemistry experiment of manufacturing ammonia, and I was describing the properties. And when I said that when you pass ammonia through phenolphthalein, the color will change pink, and I was trying to show for nearly 3 minutes, 4 minutes, it was not changing. The experiment was a failure, but I had to manage and say, "Yeah, you have to continue like that, and you will get it." And that is a skill a good teacher gets on, that they never get defeated. So I don't have anxiety. Time management will always be a problem, because you are now moving from a structured classroom to what do you call technological platform. Here your time duration is restricted. You are expected to deliver certain things at a given point of time. Therefore, designing a curriculum is a very, very difficult thing. I will tell you, macro design of the curriculum, micro design of the curriculum is different. The kind of lesson plans you prepared for your formal classrooms will not be relevant here, because here we talk about multipolar learning, whereas in most classrooms you will have a unilayer learning. And then managing mass behavior is going to be one problem. What the mass behavior means, you will not only be dealing with the children, you will also be dealing with the parent. I know a number of cases where when you are teaching, parents are sitting and watching. Very interestingly, 15 days before, I got a case when a parent complained that the teacher was teaching, or while she was teaching, she asked a question to a child and the child didn't answer. The teacher said, "Stupid, you don't know this." Immediately the parent was sitting at the back and then noticed it. Next day he came and told the principal, "Your teacher called my son stupid." Okay, so this would not have happened in the regular classroom. So remember one thing, the kind of behaviors that you need to have are entirely different. So these are the challenges you are going to get. So friends, but in spite of the fact, all this chaos, that it leads to creativity. We are going to come afresh with new things. That always out of the chaos comes the creativity, and therefore we are in for creative structure. I'm extremely happy for one reason: this disruption has happened. Though it's very painful, every disruption is painful. I'm very happy the school across the country are thinking of alternate modes of delivering education. And what you should do, what I should do, we will be discovering one thing. Friends, when people, most teachers say, sir, everybody who comes on a webinar tells us how, we are going to have a new normal, right? You go to a hospital, they say it will be a new normal. You go to a business board or working in the office, it will be a new normal. So everybody is using this word new normal, new normal. And what is that new normal? That it creates a kind of a fear and a panic. Okay. Now remember one thing: the fear of fear is more killing than the fear itself, right? Therefore, you might need to understand the word new normal is absolutely nothing new, right? What is the new normal? Your school times will be different. Your school population will be different. Your school attendance procedures will be different. Your school health architecture will be different. School organization will be different, and you will find your school leadership styles will be different. Like that, but all of you will continue to be there. What is the message? Nothing has changed, but everything is new, right? Your curriculum is all there, but the way you deliver the curriculum will be different. The pedagogy will all be there, but the way you deliver the pedagogy will be different. Assessment procedures will be there, but the way you assess the students will be different. And that's exactly the new normal. Remember one thing, look at these 4 pictures, you know that when the Homo sapiens discovered fire, right? That was a new normal for them. They didn't know how to use a fire. Then when they discovered the wheel, it was a new normal for them. When the printing press came, that was a new normal for them. When the computers came, that was a new normal for them. When you moved from a blackboard to a whiteboard, it was a new normal for you. When the whiteboard to smartboard, when you changed over, that was a new normal for you. So remember, every morning is a new normal. Every new day, every class, every period that you have is a new normal for you. Therefore, don't press the panic button, and that you be ready for newer types of experiences. Friends, what is the new normal going to do is that the universe of learning is becoming nebulous. What is the meaning of nebulous? You know the word nebula, which is basically a cloud, in the sense before the planets were born, they were in most gaseous state, and therefore, even today when we talk about information, we say we have got cloud computing. We put all the information in the cloud, right? And that's exactly, knowledge is get more and more dissipated. As you know, in other words, the way you you grab knowledge, the way you receive knowledge will not be a single source, but it will be through many sources. In other words, the effort to assimilate knowledge that will be the responsibility of the learner. The teacher will only provide the kind of the cloud, the kind of the universe in which the knowledge can be accessed. Therefore, the role of the teacher will change, the role of the student will change. And in blended learning, as I will explain to you in the due course, it is the responsibility of learning, the onus of learning goes to the learner. And therefore, self-learning is a core concept of the blended learning, right? In one way, that is very good, because for decades together, the teachers have been just taking the responsibility of learning. The teachers were defining what the child should learn. No, now, unfortunately enough, we have got a new curriculum which also supports the idea of multi-level entry and multi-exit, and that really means that you can choose a subject of your choice, and therefore the universe of learning, even in the new policy of education, is becoming nebulous, right? Nebulous. I know there are going to be problems for schools. How do I manage a combination of a child who wants to have to have a subject like biology, engineering, drawing, Mohiniyattam, and then physical education? If the boy wants to give that combination, how will the school articulate to give? That's a challenge. But the policy doesn't forbid that learner to take a subject, subjects of those choice, right? So how the society will respond, we will have to see. The variables for the access are changing, right? Now, remember one thing, all these days we were using only the classroom for learning. Remember, what has happened now? The children, in our days, the nearly 80% of learning was happening in the school, and 20% of learning was happening outside the school. Now, 80% of learning will happen outside, and 20% of learning will happen inside. Therefore, we call it the reverse osmosis in education, right? Therefore, in my days, teachers were finding it difficult to take the information from the class to the related to the outside world. Now, my teachers will find difficulty in linking outside world to the classroom level. Why that problem? Because every child will be learning differently from different sources, and therefore linking that to the concepts is going to be a challenge. So school security will become a challenge. There will be more issues with regard to security, and the gap between the skills required by the teacher and the skills the teachers already have is going to widen up. And therefore, as Lata pointed out in the beginning, co-learning is a onward journey, that it will become a necessity. Understand? Every day you have to be learning. There are absolutely no options. I used to say that when I started using the computing, I remember first day when the computer was established, put in my school in 1978. I looked at the keyboard and asked the hardware engineer whether that will give a shock, right? And that's how I started. Running a multiplication table for class 12 was a big game, right? But today, yeah, the child of class 1 is using the kind of software which you cannot even imagine, right? When my grandson says, Grandpa, you don't know how to use a computer, I don't know whether I feel ashamed or not. But that's the way the world is absolutely changing. Therefore, the gap between what the children are capable of and the teacher, that's changing. This has an impact on life skills also, because when we talk about a new normal, social distancing, now it's not a mere social distancing, the emotional architecture of the society is also changing. The consumerist pattern of the society is also changing. All these have an impact on the way you teach, the way you learn, the way the children transact in the classroom. So friends, you have a problem. Sir, I don't understand all these things. Yeah, nobody taught all these things in my B.Ed. Nobody taught all these things to be my M.Ed. What should I do? I'm really worried, right? So, friends, look at this picture. I always say this is what learning is all about, right? The 10 blind men identifying the elephant. Everybody saying that, the trunk is the elephant, and the punch is the elephant, and the leg is the elephant. And all our learning theories, our learning philosophies so far have tried to explain the process of learning in their own way. To give you an example, we started with behaviorism, right? Behaviorism, and when the behaviorism was in full force, people said that learning leads to behavioral outcome. But then they said behavioral outcome cannot happen unless otherwise people cognize, unless they understand. Therefore, we move to cognitivism. And then they say that cognition is a very individual process, and therefore everybody constructs his own curriculum, constructs his own learning. Therefore, we move to constructivism. Now we don't talk of that. We talk about social construction of knowledge, Wikipedia to other kinds of pedia, all that's coming. Therefore, we'll be moving to connectivism. Now, when you go to the classroom today, right, unlike the teachers of 60s and 70s when they practiced behaviorism in their learning objective, the last column was behavioral outcome. Then we came to cognitism, constructivism. Now, all the four philosophies are to be integrated, and that's exactly what's happening around. So, the universe of operation of learning theories, all these theories will become. As a matter of fact, one more dimension I wanted to attend. If any of you have read the researches of Vygotsky, right, who talks about the zone of proximal development, I think that's going to be the more important challenge future, because learning in the school will be very limited. Zone of proximal development, the children will expand their learning, the children will annex their learning, the children will relate their learning. Therefore, learning is going to explode, learning experiences are going to explode, and therefore the schools will act, classrooms will act as platforms where the teachers will have to be nutrients of concepts rather than deliverers of concepts. Please remember there is a world of difference between nutrients, and therefore, your methods of consolidating the concept. If you look closely to the national policy, new policy, it also says that the textual materials will only reflect the core concepts. They will not have the textbooks will not be big and go on explaining the the role of the teacher will be to pick up on the concept and move around. Very often I used to say, I'm not ashamed of repeating what I say to all teachers. I used to say curriculum and textbooks are like runways for an aircraft to take off, right? Now, if a teacher is going to restrict to the curriculum and the what do you call textbook, you have really deprived the students about the joy of the flightful, joy of flying with ideas and seeing the operating universe. So the question before us is that, sir, when did blended learning start with? Friends, you will be surprised if I'm going to, I am very contradicting person when people tell me that blended learning is something new. No. As a matter of fact, blended learning started with what do you call the Gurukula pedagogy, right? What the Guru said, he asked the disciples to go to the forest and cut the wood and come back. They need to know which wood they should construct. Where what is the environment of the forest? What kind of animals existed? How do they deal with that? Where do they should get fetch water? And they learned about Ayurvidya, Dhanurvidya. They went to the villages and then collected grains and came back to cook. And therefore, social intelligence, where they can get the grain. What are the problems in the society? Therefore, the communication between the teacher and the child, jo hum kehte the na Shravan and Smaran, that was not the one and the only way of learning, but the learning was totally a socialistic process, right? And that was experiential learning, that was developing social consciousness, and therefore there was a multi-layer learning, and therefore blended learning started as early as the Gurukula time. Remember one thing, they did not have a technology. So please note one thing, sir, I don't have the right Wi-Fi in the school. The school child doesn't have, but that doesn't stop your blended learning. Blended learning, we use technology platform as a viable platform, as a viable tool to reach out quickly and to make out things. But the presence or absence of technology is not a barrier to the blended learning. And as a matter of fact, in the pre-industrial area, you will find that blended learning was used extensively for all kinds of activities. Remember that the huge temples, mosques, and architectures you find across the country, they knew their history, they knew geography, they had no engineering, they knew so many things. They were, in other words, their profession was the core thing. But in order to know the profession, they knew what the soil was. Even a farmer had so much of insight into the kind of inputs that you need to have. And therefore, learning was not formal through a school, but learning happened. That's the most important message I want to give you. Don't ever think learning is a propriety of a school, right? Learning is much beyond. Learning happens from birth onwards. We continue to learn. As a matter of fact, when the child comes out of the school, out of a college, right from his 21st year to his last breath, he goes on learning. Therefore, you cannot say that you must go back to the school to learn. Therefore, learning is a continuum. The school plays only a limited opportunity. What is that school doing? School is giving a real-time exercise on the process of learning rather than the quantum and the quality of learning. Friends, I just want to share a small anecdote with you, which I normally repeat. A Jewish mother approached a sage and asked the sage, when should I begin the education of my child? So he asked, how old is your youngster? 5 months old, she replied. And the sage said, you've already lost 14 months, right? What does it really mean that we start our learning right from the prenatal stage? If you look at these pictures, you see the emotional responses of the fetus in the mother's womb. All of them are 5 months, 6 months old fetus, right? I've got more than 350 pictures which show different kinds of emotions of the baby. And there are two departments, one in Oxford and the other in California, which have what is called Department of Prenatal Cognitive Psychology, where they do a lot of research on how learning takes place even during the delivery time. And lot of research have indicated that some of the learning experiences are coded in the brain of the children, and therefore the child does not enter what do you call enter the universe with a blank slate of mind. It comes with a pre-recorded experiences. So whatever the information the mother has given, the stimuli the mother has given to the baby, that is reflected now. And friends, you will find, therefore, the entire process of learning is right from the childhood to the old age. Now, I am very, very conscious that I am not taking some slides on blended learning, which will come later. But the reason I want you to understand that learning is a continuous process. Never think that teacher has got all the wisdom to deliver learning. Teacher should not be the ivory tower from which the wisdom flows. Every learner is self-directed learner. The role of a school is to empower the child towards that kind of self-learning, right? Learning, friends, basically is a stimuli response mechanism. That's exactly what we started in our B.Ed, that SR bonds that we talked about, that every stimuli comes with a response. And therefore, we said learning is a consolidation of the SR bonds. That's how we started at this point of time, which is very, very true. Why I'm saying this is because now the learning is essentially emotional experience. Unfortunately, in all our pedagogy, we have marginalized the emotions. We are now dealing only with the intellectual domain of cognitive domain of the education. In other words, we are providing a bland diet to the children without addition of any nutrients and recipes for this one, and therefore the child absorbs information, goes and vomits it around. And therefore, psychologists say that learning becomes effective when the teacher delivers ECS, emotionally competent stimuli, when the teacher provides. So when the teacher is passionate, the teacher is emotional, right? The way the learning takes place, it goes from short-term memory or volatile memory to long-term memory, and the kind of bonds that are formed, you'll find here, the networking that you find in your brain here, that the first is an unstimulated brain and the bottom is the stimulated brain. Therefore, what is important is how do you establish that networking? I would even go to call my teachers as a network engineers. What is that network that we are doing? We are not linking anything. I am telling you a story. I am telling you an anecdote. I am telling you an experience through the story, through this experience, through that my concepts are getting networked in your brain. Now, therefore, a class should have a blended input. Now, I'm coming back to blended this one, because if you are going to be stale, giving only the information printed in the book, you will find that the kind of network you have is at the top. But when you do it through a story, when you do it through a song, when you do through a peer action, you will find networking is very, very effective at this point of time. Therefore, blended learning is supportive of the needs of the brain. Remember, the brain comes with a message that use me or lose me. That's all simple, right? So the brain wants challenges, right? But we say, ye kya bacha ye sunega, bacha ye seekega. So it is not the inability of a child, but it is the inability of what do you call the teacher, that the fear of the teacher that is causing the problem. Remember, our learning is totally blended. Why? That all that what we receive in terms of a visual input, in terms of an olfactory input, in terms of a sensory input, all that is received and is synthesized in the brain and it makes a meaning, right? The meaning making is indeed a blended activity. So when whether you talk of providing sources outside a blended resources that you provide, whether you provide hybrid resources or not, all that you provide goes and gets blended in the brain, and what we call the synthesis of information takes place. And therefore, meaning making is a very important thing. Remember, learning without meaning is no use. Absolutely. Therefore, when we say, what do we ask the children? अरे तुम इतना भी समझे नहीं, क्या समझ की बात क्या है? Unless otherwise is synthesized in the brain and interpreted into your meaning. Therefore, remember, synthesis is an aspect of the brain. And I very often say that the neurocognitive psychologists have come with the what do you call the concept of synesthesia in the brain. What is that? Only human beings have got this capacity of synesthesia. What is that? The ability to put all information, all emotions, and all in their dreams together and create. And that is the beautiful aspect of the human brain, right? Now you see, that's what's called the blending. You see the picture at the top, an elephant and a cow together. That's what found in a temple. And all kinds of things that you find was a creation of the human mind. How did it happen? You talk of Jugalbandi in music. That is synesthesia, ability of people to put things together. So a brain is naturally looking for creativity. If you want to make your people innovate, if you want Nobel laureates, if you want to have creative people in our country, then you must support blended learning. You must facilitate. You must trust the children that they are capable of thinking. Confucius said that learning without thinking, right, is learning without thinking is useless, and thinking without learning is dangerous, right? But what we have done now today, we have kept the two rails of for a train which run parallel. We have kept the learning separate, thinking separate, and that shouldn't happen, right? And therefore, if you want they say the objective of the knowledge society is to create new knowledge. New knowledge can be created only when people are able to put the knowledge together, and that's will happen only when the mind is blended, right? So remember, before I go into the concepts of blended learning, please understand that the brain learning ability is not linear, not structured, not predictable. It cannot be instructed. It always does a multi-process. You go to a class and you teach something. Is there any guarantee children are learning? Not at all. You pat your back and say, I have taught. You have taught. Is there any guarantee children have learned? No. So remember, learning is perceptional. Learning is individualized. Learning depends upon the emotional content and construct the child has, right? Therefore, it is very important for us to personalize learning. It is very important for us to customize learning, and that cannot happen in a structured classroom. That can happen only in a different model, and that's why we are coming to blended learning. Learning is becoming increasingly multipolar. As I said, two important words: multidimensional and multipolar. What is multipolar? Collecting information from different sources, and then from different dimensions we collect it. That's why in my days when we talked about chemistry, probably we had only three branches of chemistry, inorganic, organic, and physical, right? We never thought of mathematics and engineering going to agriculture going together. Right, today we have got agricultural economics, we have got biotechnology, we have got biomathematics, we have got biomedical engineering, bioinformatics. So all that. So convergence and divergence are both happening in knowledge society. Please remember, that is the success of the future. So my schools, my teachers, my pedagogy should facilitate the convergence and divergence of knowledge. That's what the humans are intended for. And that can happen only with the blended learning process. So friends, the schools of tomorrow, right? I remember someone asking me a question. What do you think about the future schools of tomorrow? Future schools. I said that future schools. Called it Amazonization of learning, and I said future schools will be like Amazon. Anybody can shop any piece of knowledge from a school. That's a type of things that are going to come. The focus of future is going to be on knowledge creation. Sir, where can we do the knowledge creation? In 11th class, 9th class? Sorry, it starts in KG class. It starts 1 class. They are capable of that. It is a natural process of the human brain to create. And therefore, what is our problem? Because when the child creates something and comes to us with an answer, we have all come to what do you call a question answer syndrome now, right? I only have the authority to question. The child has no authority to question. That is what is wrong. We will see the heuristic pattern, the process is reversed. As a matter of fact, the child should question and the teacher should answer. But now we question and then we ask the child to answer, which is the most unfortunate thing that has to happen. So the question basically is that we should let the child to create knowledge, and that can happen. Remember one thing, that if the child does a mistake, allow the child to take a mistake, and that's where the construction of knowledge starts. Error analysis, I very often repeat, error analysis is the basic of all learning, right? If the child does a mistake, celebrate the mistake, ask the child why you have done the mistake, reconstruct it, and that's the way the knowledge has to be constructed, rather than using our authority to discriminate a child for non-performance, right? Friends, does the brain support blended learning? Yeah. So remember one thing, your brain is capable of more ideas than the number of atoms in the universe. That's a huge capacity. We have got 1 trillion neurons in the brain, and then we lose 500,000 neurons every day, and new 500,000 neurons are being prepared every day. And therefore, very interestingly, how many ways a human being can think about the same thing? Statistically, they say 1 followed by 10.23 million kilometers of typewritten zeros. एक के बाद 10.2 मिलियन किलोमीटर तक आप जीरो डालेंगे और उन सबको एक नंबर बना के आप पढ़ सकोगे। उतनी तरह एक ही विषय के बारे में ह्यूमन ब्रेन सोच सकता है, और हम चाहते हैं बच्चा वही सोचे जो हम सोचते हैं। That's the irony of the learning. Therefore, celebrating diversity of learning is very, very important, right? I don't know how many of you might have known Mr. Anil Gupta, who was the professor from IIM Ahmedabad, who created the National Center for Innovation for Children. And he came with a beautiful statistics. He said, in the age group of 12 to 18, that he studied the people who got the President's Award for Innovation, and he found 75% of the students who got the President's Award in the age group of 12 to 18 were school dropouts, right? What does it really mean? They were willing to open up the learning, but यहाँ school में आके हम क्या करते हैं? बच्चा वही सोचे तो हम सोचते हैं. I think that is the fundamental. With blended learning, you are going to find the paradigm shift is happening, because the onus and responsibility of learning is with the child and not with the teacher. The self-learning is more going to gain important rather than directed learning. So friends, remember, human brain, throughout our lives, we use just a fraction of our brain thinking ability. Because without any difficulty, use 40 languages, memorize. That is the capacity of a human brain, friends. Therefore, be ready to open up the knowledge, and blended learning will open the knowledge. Now, before I tell you what are the tools for blended learning, I want you to understand that the human brain has got many ways of learning, but 3 important ways the brain learns, the coding of learning, they call it. Now, even the CBSE, now the new policy has said from class 6 onwards, we are going to introduce coding. I am very happy about it, because, my children will start thinking logically. My children will start thinking, applying logic to not only to that, to all subjects. That's a very positive step that they have taken, right? Now, when you look at it, 3 ways of coding: semantic coding, phonic coding, and structural coding. And remember one thing, a child may learn through one different kind of coding. We normally talk about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic type of people. Similar to that, you'll find when I tell you the sky is, without your reference, immediately you say blue, right? In other words, the moment the word, that's why you find in a classroom, when the teacher asks a question, before the question is complete, the child will, stand up and answer the question, because the child, when understand the rubrics of the question, he will get the answer, because the brain gets semantically coded answers is delivered by the brain. Therefore, the ideas and concepts are the basic for semantic coding. The second is a phonic coding. Kabhi you ask a nursery child, कुत्ता क्या करता है? कुत्ता भौ भौ करता है, right? गाय मामा कहता है. Now, in other words, now the what do you call, from the sound we are able to make the meaning. Now, so ability to code words, ability to code meanings, ability to construct knowledge through audio inputs. So you can do it by semantic coding, this one. And then, for example, you ask a biology teacher, what is the structure of DNA? The moment you say DNA, the double helix will already appear in your mind. When you say the square for the mathematics teacher, the four sides will appear. In other words, this is called the structural coding. So our human brain is capable of using different faculties to construct knowledge. We are not using any of them right now. Right? In blended learning, you will get opportunity to use all patterns of learning that the brain has, and that is an advantage. You will find that the textbook was acting as a trigger all these days, and you will find in the future it's not only textbook, but a number of other inputs that you are providing is going to act as that. Finally, learning is effective when people are stress-free. Blended learning is a totally stress-free learning. And you will see, now I'm going to give you why blended learning, 10 reasons why we should go for the blended learning. Number one, it empowers self-learning, right? As I said, a flipped classroom, a heuristic classroom, a blended classroom, the teacher asks the child to go and search for information, go and read and come, and thereby you facilitate, empower. And you know, learning is very addictive. बच्चे एक बार पढ़ते हैं बुक को, next day they are tempted. Initial problem हो सकता है. Therefore, the blended learning may facilitate a culture of learning. Now we say people don't read. Now reading habits may improve because the child has a responsibility to learn. Therefore, not only it's a self-learning, it also improves a lot of life skills associated with self-learning. Therefore, remember that blended learning has a very important aspect. Second is that it facilitates the choice of learning style. In a classroom, the teacher teaches which is one and the only way of teaching. Even mathematics problem, if you want, you say this is the way you have to solve the problem. There could be 100 other ways of doing it. In other words, lateral thinking, analytical thinking, parallel thinking, critical thinking, all these are killed in a classroom where the structured linear thinking model is adopted. But when the child takes responsibility for learning, child uses different sources of learning, you will find that the choice of the learning style will be different. The child will say, Maito, I will learn mathematics through music. Why not? Why not? Right? So remember, this kind of innovative learning practices will come. The third is a stress-free learning, because the child chooses his own time, and it is not under the pressure of learning. Fourth, it is anytime, anywhere learning. In other words, that he probably the child may be lying and learning, the child may be sitting in a garden and learning, but so long the purpose of learning is achieved, so long there is a connect between the learning and the learner, I think you have done the job. Now, when you create artificial environments as in a school, right, you find that learning becomes compulsive. We studied in our educational philosophy, psychology, something called classical conditioning theory, right? And you find my schools have become the models of classical conditioning today. What is a classical conditioning? That you have to prepare for IIT, you have to prepare for this. In other words, your objectives of classical conditioning are only varied, and therefore you will find that the blended learning will open wide opportunities for differentiated learning. It relieves the load of learning. Whatever. Now, when you come to learning load, I always say that there are 4 loads. Even last week, the Supreme Court came with a directive. I don't know how many of you have watched. The Supreme Court with came about the bag load. Now, remember 4 important loads: bag load, curriculum load, transaction load, and the psychological load. Bag load is the number of books and the notebooks the child carries. Maybe that can be reduced. But curriculum load, that that textbooks and you want population education, value education, mental health, 101 things in class 1. Therefore, curriculum load. And then when the child comes to the teacher, my teacher in class 9 and 10 said, I'm going to teach this also to you. IIT jaoge, this will be helpful to you. Therefore, the teacher wants to teach what he knows, what she knows, rather than what exactly the child needs to know. So that's a transaction load. Now, more than that, the psychological load. The psychological load is one, parents, society, peer, all that, right? Now, psychological load is much more dangerous than all other three loads. Now you find even in these days of pandemic, a number of suicides have come up, even among the artists and others. You find what is the reason? It is more of the psychological load rather than any other type of load. The urge to perform, the urge to be visible, the urge to parade the victory. So you have a psychological load. I think that blended learning will relieve all the four loads. All the four loads it will relieve. So it is advantageous. It helps in multipolar learning, right? I can learn through a web. I can learn through the music. I can learn, say, by some other game, by way of gaming, right? So you can integrate various sources of learning and do. For example, I used to say, why not you teach some mathematic, what do you call it? Proofs using a Rangoli? Why not? I can give, at least half a dozen theories and concepts which can be, explained through your Rangoli. So I think opening up learning is very, very important. And that's the exact problem. Because when you look at the kind of huge architectures that this country has had, the huge kind of scientific discoveries this country had, they did not have a closed model of learning. They had an open model of learning. And I think that's very important. Multipolar learning will be facilitated, right? Now, the pace of learning will vary from the child because the child will learn according to his own difficulty level. He says, now, many people may not know that in our brain, the right brain, left brain work on an alternate systems. 90 minutes, 1.5 hours, the right brain is more active than the left brain. In other words, psychologists talk about 18 different cycles. So sometimes you work very good in mathematics. After an hour and a half, you are not very good. So the question is choice of learning, time of learning, pace of learning is exclusive to the learner. And remember, blended learning will help that process. And then, blended learning helps in co-construction of knowledge, right? Now, when the child wants to learn something, he calls up his peer and says, "Maine ye pada, maine ye kiya, tumne ye kya kiya." What in other words, we talk both constructivism and connectivism are both met in the co-construction of knowledge. If you are using a flipped classroom, when the child comes back, you are using a brainstorming, you are using a debate, you are using a quizzing. In other words, the children work together, and therefore sharing of knowledge will be very important. And that's one of the dimensions that you have. Now, the other thing about blended learning is it's highly inclusive, right? Whatever method that you want, you can have culture put across, skills put across, careers put across, experiences, share learning put across, and then you have got language input. So in other words, gender issues can be brought in. So many things can be brought conceptual level. So what I wanted you to understand fundamental, blending does not mean resources only. Blending means conceptual level. That's where most people mistake hybrid learning and blended learning, right? Very often they are used synonymously. Please understand that there is a thin line of difference. So people who have studied science in class 6 will know the difference between compounds and mixtures. Mixtures, you have all those elements present which can be taken out easily. When it comes to a compound, it has been synthesized, therefore you cannot take. Blended learning, they are synthesized. In hybrid learning, they all exist together. The good teacher must know how to convert hybrid learning into blended learning. If he is going to provide only the resources, that's a hybrid learning. But when you are able to use the resources to construct a lesson plan, to construct a pedagogy, you have converted hybrid learning into a blended learning. Friends, last but not the least, with the blended learning, the thing is, it offers It's a spectrum of assessment. When you are using 20 different tools, you have 20 different modes of assessment. Why should we always go on testing a child only on a paper and a pencil? Why only on the screen? There are a number of other ways that you have doing that. Therefore, friends, remember that it opens up a wide variety of opportunities for what is called learning, assessment while learning, assessment on learning, and assessment for learning. All these things can be achieved through that. So, then the question arises, what kind of a pedagogy we will use for the blended classrooms over there, right? Now, remember, before I walk in to tell you what pedagogy you must use, I'm just going to ask you to understand the very word pedagogy, because I have explained in some of the platforms that we don't understand the word pedagogy. We think that pedagogy is teaching. If really you go into the root of the word, pedagogy is a word which is basically from with a Roman background, and in Rome, in early Rome, they used the word gog for a slave, right? Slave. So the rich men used slaves at home, and the privilege of learning was bestowed only to the rich people, and therefore the gogs or the slaves were used to escort these children to the master's house. Therefore, the gogs mentored these children, took care of them, walked along with them, facilitated them for learning, and brought them back. Because they walked along with these children, they were called pedagogues. And the word pedagogy has taken a different meaning at this point of time. But if you look at the essence, a pedagogue is one who has a job of hand-holding, who has got a job of mentoring, who has got a job of walking along with the child to a destination. He doesn't deliver anything, but he facilitates the process. That is a pedagogue, right? But what we today, pedagogue is a teacher who comes and delivers what is given in the book in the class. That's not pedagogy. So pedagogy is a facilitative process. It's a hand-holding process. It's a mentoring process. If you understand that, you will find blended learning falls in place with the right kind of pedagogy, right? Now, the other point is that the objective of the pedagogy is to make every learner a thought leader, right? Because as I told you in the beginning, that learning without thinking is useless, and thinking without learning is dangerous, right? Today, we have many people who are leaders. I'm not talking of political leaders, even in industry and others, but who are incapacitated to think. They are positional leaders, right? Therefore, what the country needs today is thought leaders, right? For a thought leader, you don't have to have a PhD, not necessary. A thought leadership comes by practice, right? Conception of thought, right? And navigation of thought, conceptualization of thought, processing of a thought, right? Engineering of a thought, delivering a thought, right? There are so many processes. I can talk about thought leadership 2 hours, but the question basically is, remember that we have ideas, we don't convert ideas into thoughts, and we don't nurture thoughts to become productive. Believe me that for every 1 million thoughts we get, hardly we use 1 or 2 thoughts which become productive, right? And that is the problem, the loss in education. Therefore, the objective of a school, the objective of a teacher is to facilitate a child to grab a thought, to catch a thought, to build on the thought, to nurture the thought, and to process the thought, and to become an entrepreneur of thoughts. That is what the thought leadership is all about. So, when it comes to really I am going to talk about online learning. I will use the word digital learning because the digital learning has got 2 dimensions. One could be online, the other could be offline, right? Now, when you talk of a digital learning process, you find that the digital learning process has 2 dimensions. One is synchronous model, the other is asynchronous model. All that what we are using at this point of time is a synchronous model. In other words, as I am doing, I am on the screen. Fortunately, you don't see my face, you see my slide. But if there are no slides, you would be tortured to see my own face for the nearly 90 minutes over there. And that's exactly what happens in your classroom. If you've got a 45 minutes class, 40 minutes my teacher's face is seen, and the child feels bored, child feels irritated, and therefore that is a synchronous model where the teacher could ask a question on a live chat, one or two. But that's not an effective model of online, right? A good online model, a teacher should not be present physically more than 25% to 30% of the time. The rest of the time should be used for display of resources, video, audio, what do you call, whatever be the source. You can pick up, I'll give you 20 resources, you can pick up anything and then do that. Therefore, that is an asynchronous model. Now the child looks at those things and gets back to the teacher. He has a question, he sends a question by email, or next day when he asks the teacher, he asks a question. So you have an asynchronous model and an asynchronous model. Unfortunately, we are using the synchronous model right now, but I wouldn't blame anybody because that's the immediate catch that we have. We have not been trained on online. We have not been trained on digital line. That's why I said that you need at least 1 year to stabilize, understand, use different dimensions of the technology model, right? So we don't have a magic wand. So hold on to your passions, be a continuous learner, you will pick it up. Now, so when it comes to online, we have three important dimensions. One, we have the flipped classroom. The other is a blended classroom. The third is a heuristic classroom. I'm very sure that all of you know all these things. I'm going to be only repetitive, but I'm just going to give you a few nuances of what is right and what is wrong. That's all. You know the flipped classroom. Flipping is the process of reversing what's happening. So whatever is done in the classroom is done at home, and whatever is done at home as a homework is being done in the class. That's what people think about what you call that. But I will tell you one thing, flipping is not simply reversing the process. It has much more than what is necessary. For example, what is critical in flipped classroom is that you send a knowledge pack to the child to read at home. That's knowledge is delivered at home. The child learns and comes back. But what kind of knowledge are you giving? You are giving something which is imported on the internet, or you are giving something which is available on the textbook, and therefore that the point basically, instead of reading a book, he reads what you have sent it across. But what is important is you have to prepare a lesson or a curriculum which is good enough to be dealt with at tomorrow's class. When the child comes back to the class tomorrow, next day, you are going to engage him in activity. How do you engage them in an activity? You may have a quiz, you may have a brainstorming, you may have a discussion, you may have a conferencing, you may have a peer group, you may have a project be done. There could be a number of things. But the kind of material that you have sent to the child, is it good enough to deal all these things? No. That doesn't provoke learning. You are only giving a bland diet. You are giving only catching up what is available in your textbook or catching what's available in the screen. So you have to, what do you call, critically, articulate the content. So that's why I said macro design and micro design of the curriculum for blended learning is important. Who will do the macro design? Macro design will be done by the principal along with a team of academic heads, and the micro design will be done by the groups of teachers who are dealing with that particular class and subject over there. Now, when it comes to the micro design, you will know that in this particular chapter, I've got 5 concepts. One concept can be done through brainstorming. Another concept could be done through a project there. Now, I've got 5 groups of students who are doing. So you rotate them, right? So you move from flipped classroom to the blended classroom, right? So flipped classroom encourages activity, encourages participation, encourages teamwork, enhances the self-confidence of the children, and also that you find it ensures the confidence level of the children, right? Now, what is the problem in delivering the kind of content? Content has to be gravitating. That's a very, very important thing, because in a flipped classroom or a blended classroom, the first 2-3 minutes of the teacher is very important. How are you going to start a class? Because, you know, the first 2-3 minutes can provoke the child to remain gravitated or switch off. So whether your presentation is gravitating, whether it's content rich, whether you are providing a narrative or you are giving spotlights. A good teacher will give only spotlights and not narratives, because the child will have an opportunity to pick up on the spotlight and then question and do that. Therefore, it will become provocative, whether it's facilitating thoughtfulness, whether it's analytical and responsive. I think that is the dimension of a flipped classroom. So, to me, the success of a blended classroom, the success of a flipped classroom depends upon your articulation of the content, articulation of the pedagogy, right? It has multifarious effects, right? So the kind of interactions you can have, as I told you already, pair, this one, teacher-led discussions, peer discussions, brainstorming, quizzing, problem solving, all these things, you know it pretty well, you can do that. So how does a teacher interact in blended learning? You engage the children, you join along with them, you participate in the activities, you integrate them, work them, and you get involved. As a matter of fact, if you study artificial intelligence, you will cite something called deep learning. Now, what do you call, in the flipped classroom, you should take your children from surface learning to deep learning, right? Now, that lies the success of the this one. Remember, blended learning is not flipped learning. Flipped learning is one of the several resources for the blended learning, right? In its exclusivity, flipped learning is not blended learning. Flipped learning could use some of the instruments of blended learning, but it is not totally blended learning. Flipped learning, you will find, is an effective way of being used in the blended learning. Similarly, blended learning is not simply online learning. Blended learning is not simply online learning, right? Online learning is an effective tool. Even an offline learning could be a part of the blended learning. When I give you the tools of that one, you will understand. Remember, therefore, blended learning has to happen at 3 dimensions. One, resource level. 2, the operative level. Third is the operative level is the pedagogical level. Third is the design level. Therefore, think that blended learning has got 3 artifacts or 3 verticals. 1, conceptual design, which calls for design thinking. Second, the operative domain, which is the pedagogical design that you develop. 3, the resources that you are required. So you need all the 3 dimensions to work. For example, I don't mind if a teacher is working only on resources, she doesn't teach. If another teacher is only teaching and not developing the resources, right? There will be another teacher who is only a content developer. Very good, no problem. What I'm saying is that you must develop specialities of each thing which is important. So, how to blend learning, right? 1, academic content. You already know all these things: art, music, theater, life skills, social skills. So, when you want to blend all these things, remember, a lesson, if you are going to take, for example, you are taking a poem on daffodils, teaching, how will you define a blended learning? This one, right? Can you use a poem for something of an art? Can you use music in that, right? Can you use a video by which you take the child to detour of Lakeland, right? Now, can you ask integrate life skills to the children? What are the advantages of having preserving a lake and a mountain area? Can you ask a question how a poet develops his skills in that area? So, a lot of co-scholastic activities and other things can be integrated. That is what we call the delicious blend. So, blended classrooms use diversity of resources, optimize that. Remember, it's a very important word, optimization of, because everything is there, you don't use it. You optimize the resources. You adopt a buffet approach. Why? You don't serve everything. You don't tell a child, I've got 20 items, you have to do everything. He will use only 4 of them. But whatever he prefers to use, he will use. But the learning is more productive and engaging. Encourages a choice of the process, encourages personalization. These are the advantages of the blended classrooms. Friends, I'm very short of time, right? I'll so very quickly move. When it comes to the types of blended learning, you will find there are 12 different models of blended learning, right? But I'm not going to deal with all these 12 because now we are at the embryonic stage, right? Therefore, what I would suggest is so far you can understand the modalities, it's good enough. But nevertheless, I want you to at least know the names. One is called station rotation blending, lab rotation blended model, remote blended model, flux blended model, right? I will send you the script to you, right? The flipped classroom blended model, individual rotation blended model, project based blended model, self-directed blended learning, inside-out blended learning, outside-in blended learning, supplemental blended learning, mastery plus. Now, you may ask a question, what is all these things, sir? This is how, if any concept is taken by a Western educator, he dissects them into pieces to find out whether how you can make it productive and make it commercial and make it. Now you understand my point. So depending on the geography, depending upon the feasibility, depending upon your resource availability, even if you adopt one model, you have done the job. If you are, and I find that in the Indian environment, 4 different models are good enough to be adopted. One, one is called the rotation model of blended learning. That is, part of the children are in the class, part of the children are studying at home, right? 50%, 50%. Or the teacher is teaching in the class, the same is telecast to the child at home. So only social distancing is remaining. Otherwise, the learning is there. Or you can, what do you call, flip the children. Today 50% come, tomorrow the next 50% come. So a rotation based model. Now, flux model or blended learning over here, right? In the flux model, what happens is, right, though the children learn only within the campus over there, the modalities of their learning will be different because some children would like to take one particular route for learning. The other children might like to take another route for learning. So everybody is part, but the process they adopt will be flexible, and therefore that is the essence of the flux model of learning. The third is a la carte model of learning, where the child decides that I will study 3 subjects in the school, 2 subjects at home, right? Or right, for one term I will study 2 subjects, the 3 subjects at home. Next term I will come. So in other words, the approach is you can order anything in a la carte, and therefore he has the option to choose everything. And the last is called the model enriched virtual model over here, right? So the child uses both online and offline components over there to enrich a subject of his choice, to enrich a competency of a choice. In other words, to master a particular thing. In other words, he may neglect a few, he may ignore a few, but he becomes competent, he becomes master. That's called the enriched model that you have. So, so that's about blended learning. Next is called the heuristic learning. Now, heuristic learning is something which is very, very, very Indian. If you look at all our Upanishads, you will find there was only a dialogue between the teacher and the guru and the disciple. Same thing was with Plato and Aristotle. The teacher asked a question to the child, and the child asked another question to the teacher. Based on the teacher will ask third question. In other words, knowledge was co-constructed. Knowledge was, basically the child will investigate the knowledge. So it is investigated approach. It was a research-based approach, and that is the essence of that. And I think that's very, very important over here. So the point is that 4-way communication happens in blended learning. Facilitator to learner, learner to facilitator, learner to learner, facilitator to stakeholders. These are the different types of learning. And in the Bloom's taxonomy, when you talk about in the earlier model, structural model of our classroom, the onus of responsibility for all the 7 stages was with the child. But now you will find that the bottom two stages are with the child, and the rest for top 4 or 5 are co-construction. The teacher and the child becomes partners in this process over there. So friends, I'm not going to, so I will take only two important things. All that what we are going to do is to set a fire in the belly of the child so that he is able to pursue learning. He becomes institute. I would, because the time is coming to a close, given time, I'm just going to give a very small anecdote and stop it. When I was a teacher, right, I had a great principal called Kulapati Balakrishna Joshi, right? And I still remember when a parent was had come to meet my teacher, principal, was a great man, was a great teacher, model teacher, role model teacher. And when the parent had come, and there was a debate why the child is not doing well, I used a proverb. I told the principal, sir, I can take a horse to the pond, but I cannot make it drink. Right? And that's what psychologists say. He smiled and said, Bala, please don't say it again. Right? Today, my cognitive psychologists say that, my dear teacher, your job is not to take the horse to the pond to drink water. Your job is to create a thirst in the horse so that it automatically goes to drink water. Right? And therefore, blended learning is an approach where we can create a thirst in the children to seek knowledge. And that is the success of blended learning. I'm sure we will have more opportunity to discuss at a later stage, but unfair to hold you beyond the time that's given. I must thank Lata ji and all of you for a very patient listening today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. But I don't think we've had enough of you. There are a few questions.
Yeah.
That we want to ask. And if you don't mind, could I start with the question?
Okay. Yeah. Open. I am free. Absolutely. No problem.
Right. So, sir, the first thing that comes to the teacher's mind is that when we redesign our curriculum, what should be the major parameters we keep in mind, as while keeping quality over quantity will lead a more paced approach online? So,
the very simple thing is that always quality is priority over the quantity, number one, right? Because once the child has understood the process of learning and the pursuit of the quality, the quantum of learning is something which he can manage at his own level, number one. The second factor is that one word I used today, which you should know, the gap between the teacher and the child is that the teacher focuses on what has to be learned. He is not aware of the learnability of the child. Therefore, the learnability of the child may be 10 times more than what the teacher has designed or understood. Therefore, you should always focus on optimization of learning in terms of quality and quantity, and facilitate enhanced learning, encourage learning beyond the classroom. That's a very important dynamics which you need to take. That's my answer.
Right. Alright, sir, I think another common question that a lot of teachers have is how to train the students as well as the parents for this kind of an approach, because they probably find it overwhelming, and also they are also, like us, fixed in probably the traditional ways of education. So how do we go about training the students and the teachers?
That's the most difficult question, because it calls for mind re-engineering, right? Mental re-engineering, mindset change. I used two words in the beginning. One was change, the other is transformation. Change is something which happens from top to bottom. It can be done. It need not happen as an organic thing. If a chemistry teacher will say there are two processes, one is called adsorption, the other is called absorption. Adsorption is a surface activity. Absorption is a systemic activity. What is happening now is a systemic activity, which is a transformation. So any transformation will face challenge. Parents will oppose, the children will not oppose. I can bet one thing. They have problems because they don't have adequate resources, probably, the encroachment of time. So children will get habituated in a couple of weeks or months. I have no problem. But parents need to be educated. Therefore, that becomes the responsibility of the school to call for parental interactions using counselors and all that. As a matter of fact, one method I used in some of the schools, which worked very well, I used parents to train the parents. I called parents who are conversant with technology. I called parents who are leaders in different fields and asked to speak to other parents about how the future of learning should happen. And that's taken much better because, as I normally say, peer learning is very advantageous, and that's true even of your parents. I think that's what you should do.
Right. Seems logical, sir, having other parents train, and just like we do with students, we have peer mentors for them.
Yeah.
We also have peer mentors for the parents.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, sir, another question that has been raised is, while it looks like a great approach, some of the teachers are worried about how will it be able to serve the children with special needs or children who are lagging behind in academics, or would it be too much for them, this kind of an approach?
Number one, I have never subscribed to the idea of a slow learner or a fast learner, right? The question is, the slow learning happens because of lack of aptitude, because of lack of proper environment, or your child may learn one particular subject very fast and one subject very slow, because it again comes to aptitude, perception, whatnot.
Right.
I think with the freedom of choice for subjects, they will do much better in whatever subject they have chosen. Okay. And in addition to that, when you provide differentiated processes except the classroom, they will choose a process which is better to them, and then they will work. But when it comes to children of who are challenged or differentiated learners, I think the blended learning is an excellent model for them. There, they should be able to cope with learning and come to at par with the normal learners much better with blended learning. As a matter of fact, it will be a boon to them rather than a bane. Okay.
Right. So if you could give us an example of how it would work with children with special needs, I think that's what teachers wanted to know.
The point is, for example, let me give 2-3 examples. One, when I was a director, I still remember one child came with special needs came to me a couple of months before the final exam. I think sometime in October, November, when the exam was in March. And she said, I want to drop mathematics and take music. Right? I said, you got only 3 months. How will you cope? She said, that's not your problem, sir. That's my problem. Right? And somehow, even though the rules had some difficulties, I was able to circumvent the rule and grant. You wouldn't believe that girl child stood first in the CBSE in music.
Oh,
right? So the question is, secondly, there have been children. A case came to me when the students said, I have problems in writing, but I can type. Will you allow me a typewriter for the examination? Right? We got a special permission. You wouldn't believe that child got around 95% in the subject, and we thought that using the typewriter he has gone to an unfair means, because that beautiful way he could not have done. But when we asked the child to come and repeat it, I was shocked that even I could not cope with that kind of a skill. Okay. So the point, let us not assume that children with special needs, they have certain competencies in which they excel. There is something, if you go into the brain sciences, there is something called cognitive shift. For example, if the children have no eyesight, right, all these competencies of the vision factor are transferred to olfactory or sensory inputs, and they are interpreted differently. They excel. So, I mean, let's not try to say that, the only problem is we should not compare them with anybody. They are special needs. They should excel in their special factors. That's it.
Right. Thank you, sir, for answering that question. Sir, also, we would like to know about how blended learning can be adapted to sports and physical education, and how can digital learning help in that?
Well, I think that's a beautiful question. You should ask your PT master, right?
So the question is from him. The question is from him.
Whereas I will tell you one thing, I have always found that integration of physical education with all other disciplines. As a matter of fact, mathematics, there are huge opportunities of integrating physical education with, mathematics, with sciences. So concepts. Now, the only problem that you will find is that the children may not get that frequent opportunity to be on a playground at this point of time. But then, a number of other issues like, the mental health issues, physical disciplines, using the, yoga. For example, I have a few children who spend hundreds of rupees for learning yoga online, right? So that physical education teacher can teach yoga to the children when they are at home online. Why not? Right?
Right.
So you want to find the way out, you will find something or the other, right? So that's why I started with the concept that there is nothing called impossible. Impossibility is only an opinion, not a fact. Okay. So we should move from opinion to action.
Okay. So also we see that the effects of this kind of approach will be more visible in the long term. How do we satisfy the short-term goals and the short-term aspirations is also something that, because how will it satisfy the short-term goals of all the stakeholders, the teachers, the parents, the students?
You see, one thing, we are going through a period of chaos, right? All that what we are doing is only to put things together and manage the situation and to maximize productivity. Okay. And the other day when I was talking about to the principals, I said leadership in chaos means bringing balance to the situation and optimizing productivity. That's all. Okay. So you what is important is that you have to make every teacher a leader. In other words, self-leadership is more important rather than a team leadership at this point of time, right? And therefore, confidence level, morale of my teachers has to improve. If that is done, well, we can manage. Remember one thing, if something doesn't happen, don't press a panic button. Let it go up, right? This too will pass.
Right. That's beautiful. So it partly answers the next question that I had for you, but I'm still going to shoot it to you.
Yeah.
During online classes, it becomes so difficult to get responses. Out of 40 children, only 5 respond. How do we expect them to read up about a topic as flipped learning and start a discussion?
Number one, don't expect responses from all the 40, right? That is where when it comes to a flipped classroom, you send the information, knowledge back to the child. The way you design the content is, as I said, is very critical. The next day when the children come, right? If you have got 40 children in the class, right? Make them into 8 different groups. Before go to the class, define 8 activities. Give 8 activities to 8 different groups. One group could have a quiz between each other. The other could have a group can have a group discussion. Third could have a brainstorming. And the fourth could take up a mini project to be done in 30-40 minutes. Therefore, you must learn to engage them. Remember, the concept of question answer is not the right way. They have to learn together. I don't want anybody to answer any question to me. And I want to keep them engaged in knowledge. right? So my paradigm of treatment in the class. So you come with 8 different things in the classroom and
Right.
keep them busy. That's what you need to do.
So I don't know about the teachers, but I can actually visualize my students listening to what you said and rejoicing in that, because they would love to have something like this. I can totally understand. And being
Yeah.
a counselor, it makes a lot of sense to me with your when catering to different needs. So one last question I think that I have for you. So is the system of prescribing books by CBSE not to be replaced by prescribing syllabus for learning outside the text? Because whatever system we follow, if there are prescribed books, the aim is to master the contents of the book only.
Well, I must tell you something. That is good enough for the classes where you appear for the board examinations,
Right.
right? Right from class KG to class 8, right? The universe of learning is very open. You are the monarch of the situation. You can adopt any pedagogy, any textbook on that. See, to me, as I told you in the beginning, a textbook and a curriculum is like the runway for the aircraft to take off. If my teacher, like a pilot, says I cannot go beyond the textbook, that means that flight will go get into a disaster, right? And that's exactly what happens in the classroom. What I would say is, I will take each topic and set the fire for discussion so that the child will go back home and then read the chapter and come back. मैम आपने ये नहीं बताया पर मैंने वो टेक्स्ट बुक में ये पढ़ा है इसको आप क्या कहते हैं क्या so that should be the spirit. Okay, so I think we need to encourage self-learning. That is from KG onwards. KG onwards.
Right, sir. And I think it also requires a lot of input from the parents. And like you said, we need to train the parents because, again, concerns like what if the children have not read the material you have provided? What if they don't cooperate would come up? So
Yeah,
I think,
see, basically when I say we are in a consumerist society,
right.
therefore, parents want that their children should go to IIT, this engineering college, that college, or something else. I don't blame them because they are in a competitive society. But this kind of a mindset is so fast changing with the types of jobs changing today, right? The other day when I was doing a program, I had an official from Microsoft who was facilitating me for the program. And when I was introduced to him online, I was told that he was an MS ortho. He was an orthopedic surgeon, but he left it and he came because he had a lot of interest in computers. He came and joined Microsoft and is working in the Microsoft company. Right? Now, I will give you another example. When I was a student of in the school, after doing my PUC, I wanted to take BA Hindi. Okay,
Right.
I am a Tamilian. Now imagine what could have been because I studied Hindi outside. I had developed a interest, but everybody was opposed to me. So I did my chemistry, BSc and MSc, but that didn't stop me from doing my MA in Hindi, Sahitya Ratna in Hindi, and I used to be participating in Kavi Sammelans. That was my passion, right?
Right.
So the question basically is, the learning universe and the learnability of individuals is different, and that's where the parents and teachers make the mistake of restricting learning to what they know rather than what the child is capable of.
Right. Thank you very much, sir, for patiently answering all our queries and for enlightening us. And I would like to now invite Lata ma'am to please extend our gratitude towards you. Thank you so much, sir. Lata ma'am.
Thank you. I enjoyed being with all of you. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Lata.
Okay. Oh my God. I'm wondering how my teachers will sleep, but I'm also wondering how I will sleep. Huh? Too much of a load, but a very nice one too. I don't know how to thank you, but I have just one very short question for you. When we talked of the Gurukulam pedagogy, and if I were to kind of list and see, do these all fall into that broad category of pedagogy, as in the Gurukul pedagogy, as in blended learning pedagogy, which includes all the flipped learning and many, many other strategies? Will experiential learning be a separate pedagogy? Will project-based learning be a separate pedagogy? So I'm just thinking, am I reasonably correct in my understanding of all of these?
Yeah, you are right. As a matter of fact, I was only drawing a similarity just to diffuse the idea that blended learning is a gift of the 21st century, right?
Correct.
Second, that blended learning is an impression is being created amongst the teachers that blended learning is basically technology based and technology enabled, which is not correct, right?
Mhm.
The question is blended learning is something much the universe is much broader, but
Mm.
technology is the current facilitating tool on which we do, right?
Mhm.
And then when you talk of that Gurukula pedagogy, and what I was trying to do is at that particular point of time, for that kind of a social setup, the kind of the learning
Correct.
inputs were blended.
Correct.
Okay, that's how you cannot expand it much beyond. Every
Fair.
kind of pedagogy has got it has a geopolitical
Correct.
context. So
Correct.
we need to let it remain there, and we need to look at the geopolitical context at this point of time and adopt the kind of blended learning that what we have at this point.
Sure. Thank you so much, Balaji. I think you leave me absolutely awestruck with the amount of the knowledge that flows, and I sometimes wonder how much of the life it is in you that you spend on this, and how much of the others you have any time for. So you have had a very beautiful journey, and because you can empathize so well, and I love the way you said that if the teachers haven't moved and the students haven't moved, nothing surprising, because one fine day suddenly you'll find that you've moved a lot. So this is the biggest, I think, comfort level we have to give the teachers, particularly at a time when there is a lot of disruption that's around us, and a situation which is unpredictable in so many ways, and therefore we're just trying to equip ourselves to deliver best what is in our profession, the ability to help students learn, and in the process learn ourselves. Because when somebody tells me, in fact, I like to tell the teachers this as well in your presence, that when somebody says, oh my God, she has 40 years of experience in education, I find that all of that was okay for that time. And if I have to be relevant today, I begin fresh now. And therefore, my journey is as new as theirs, except that there is some wisdom I draw from my failures or my strengths. So there is nothing new. We all learn together. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much, very dear teachers, for spending this beautiful time in the presence of Mr. Balasubramaniam, for I'm sure you've learned, tried to assimilate what he has just spoken for the last 1.5 hours, and the way forward, because you're all much, much younger. Great hopes. You're all the hopes of the future, hopes of the children, and hopes of the society, because your hands is what we will hold, and so will the children. Thank you so very much. And Nishi, thank you for very much for, and of course, young Neha, I think you put it all together very well. I need to thank you and each and everyone present. God bless. Stay safe.
Thank you. See you, all of you. Bye.